The Harada are a reclusive insect-like race known for its idiosyncratic attitude towards protocol. Felix Leach calls Picard a private dick. And in 2026, a shortstop for the London Kings will break Jolton Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak record. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton and Denise Crosby.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 1, Episode 11, The Big Goodbye, written by Tracy Torme and directed by Joseph L. Scanlon. This was January 9th, 1998. Special thanks to Grandpa One for sponsoring this entire season. And we have a very special guest today, everybody. Felix Leach himself, Mr. Harvey Jason. Hello, Harvey. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
This is so cool. First things first, can we just jump into it and ask you a very important question, which is, what brought you to the United States first and foremost, and Hollywood specifically?
Well, I came here because I was working with the now legendary Peter Cook, doing a lot of satire, political satire in London. And we came to New York, and then they brought us out to California. And then I did a lot of work in New York on Broadway and so forth. And then I got brought out here by Robert Wise, to do a film with Julie Andrews. And then I was commuting for a long time. Wow. And then ultimately moved out here and stayed here ever since. So I am a transplant to the West Coast. And I've been here next week will be 172 years I've been out here.
Wow. Congratulations.
You look amazing. You look amazing. I want to talk to you about your beauty secrets later. Which movie did you do with Julie?
Star.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So she was my mother-in-law for many years. I was married to Jeffrey Edwards, her stepson with Blake.
Yeah.
And I love her dearly. And so you must have known Dudley Moore as well, yeah?
Of course. Yeah,
of course.
Wow.
Loved Dudley.
Very well. Yeah.
Loved him very much. I got to work with him. And actually, I got my SAG card working in the movie 10 that he did. That Blake directed. Yeah.
Amazing.
So that's cool. I didn't know that about you.
Wow, Julie Andrews. I didn't know that about you.
This young man has seen some history. He's a Hollywood legend. Also, something that is near and dear to our hearts, you apparently went to school with one Rene Auberjonois for a year. Is that correct?
Very briefly. I came, very briefly. I went to Carnegie Tech for a minute and a half and met,
a cup of coffee.
Rene, yeah. So we've known each other for a long time. I knew him, we were kids. Yeah. I was very fond of Rene. A lovely fellow and a lovely actor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Carnegie Tech.
Yeah. Okay. So one more thing I just want to bring up before we really get into this episode. Word on the street has it that Seth MacFarlane of Family Guy and The Orville walked into your bookstore that we'd like to get about a little later and actually recognized you as Felix Leach. Is this correct?
Yeah, he did indeed. Yeah, he came in, he said, "Oh my God," he said, "Felix Leach." Well, I didn't realize he knows everything about Star Trek. I mean, he's the number one Star Trek fan. He said, "Oh, Felix Leach." I nearly fell over. I said, "Oh, did you know this?" And then he saw, the plate with the Felix.
Oh yeah.
But no, that was very. It was a funny experience doing that because I had known. I knew Gene Roddenberry for a long, long time, and I was very close to Gene and Majel. And I was a big fan of Gene as a person, as well as the fact that, he's a tremendous creative talent. He was tremendous. And I remember the very first time I met Gene. I was sent in to meet him for a pilot to play an Indian, an East Indian. And I went in as an East Indian. And I said, I'm very pleased to meet you, Mr. Roddenberry. And I'm sitting here talking to him like this, and he's enunciating clearly as though I don't speak proper English. He sat there about 20 minutes, and he said, "Oh, tell me about yourself." And he said, "Well, not to tell, but I work a lot of time when I'm in Delhi. I work a lot of it, and I do a lot of Shakespeare. But I don't." And he said, "Oh, really?" And yeah, I do a lot. On the stage, I'm a lot in Delhi and in Agra. I do a lot of work in Agra. And we're talking about 20 minutes, and suddenly I stopped. I said, "Actually, I got to tell you, I'm not really Indian,
God.
Then we had a long conversation, and then he said, "Look, I'd like you to play this part in this pilot that I'm doing," and so we did. It was a terrible pilot, but we had such fun. My old friend Mariette Hartley was in it, and a very dear friend Ted Cassidy was in it.
Oh my God!
Genesis 2, and Gene was really fond of this pilot, and he had our little buttons made. I think there were 5 of us that were starring it, and had buttons made with our pictures on it. And he had a big party at his house for us, and he had great hopes for it. And it was a disastrous failure. It was a terrible failure. It was awful. It was actually a terrible show, but we had a lot of fun doing it. And he was very disappointed when they didn't pick it up. But we all were too,
Do you remember what the show was about or what it was called?
It was called Genesis 2.
Oh, right.
Was it a sci-fi thing?
Yeah, it was a sci-fi. It was Mariette, Ted Cassidy, me, and Alex Cord, I think. Alex Cord, yeah. And a couple of other people read it. And sadly, it didn't sell. And Gene Majel was in it. Was very disappointed. But I remember it was a lot of fun doing it. I remember that we had a lot of fun. It's 100 years ago. We had a lot of fun doing it. But Gene was very, very helpful to me. At one point, I was writing a movie, and I was having trouble with a particular scene, and I ran into Gene on a set. I was doing a show at the same time as an actor, and Gene came to visit. I said, "Oh, I wonder if you could help me out." And I explained the scene to him. So I'm having trouble writing this particular. He was fantastic, and he worked it out. He was remarkable, absolutely remarkable. He was such a hero to me, this guy, in so many ways, because he was devoid of any sense of, as you must know, he had no pretentiousness whatsoever, no snobbery. He was just a superb person.
Yeah, very generous man, very, very generous.
Yeah, he
with
was.
His heart and his mind, and
and how clever, how brilliantly, what a genius. He really was. He was a genius to me.
Look at this, this legacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh.
And
so he was sticking with sci-fi. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fun episode to do this show. The guy was very difficult. The big actor that what's his name?
Oh, right.
That played
Red Block.
Yeah,
played Red Block.
Yeah. Well, I can't think of his name.
Mm-hmm. Lawrence Tierney.
Larry Tierney.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Tierney C. Diekman, everybody.
Yeah.
That man has done a lot of work. A lot of. Yeah.
I've heard his voice. His voice is so familiar too.
Yeah. He was a very good actor. I was jealous because his brother was a big film actor, a successful actor. I can't remember his name either. I can't remember my own name, let alone his name. But his brother was a big actor, Steve somebody. He was very resentful of that. But he was a difficult guy, this guy.
Really?
How so? How so difficult? Like, in what way?
I remember he would. I'm not being disrespectful of the dead because he was a very good actor, solid presence. But I remember like he'd blow a line, then he'd blame one of the technicians. That couldn't send the fucking thing. The guy's light, move it over. Then he'd blow another line, and blame it on somebody else.
I literally did that right before we recorded.
Listen, it's a story of my life.
Wow. Huh. He was fabulous in the role. He really had a presence in that role.
Oh, he was a really good actor.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a terrific actor.
And
Yes.
Harvey,
I think he elevated everyone too. You just got a sense of how everyone was sort of acting in that 40s milieu. Everybody stepped their game up a little bit, it felt like to me.
I'll tell you a funny story because it was Pat Stewart's first thing here. And I had a deal to get very, very cheap transatlantic phone calls. And I think it was illegal, but it was very, very cheap. And I was talking to him about this, and he had no money at this point. So he said, can you give me this? Can you tell me how I can get onto this thing so I can make my cheap calls to London? So I said, yeah, absolutely. And then he came up, he couldn't thank me enough. He said, I'm making these calls constantly. They're like a nickel a piece. It's fabulous.
Wow, that's a great story.
Now today, I'd like to get money back from him for that.
Yeah.
We'll let him know.
We'll send the bill.
Yeah, right. Get in line, Harvey. Get in line.
Yeah.
What about, had you met or worked with Patrick before? Like, had you crossed paths in England?
Never. Not before or since. No.
Oh, interesting.
No.
What else do you remember from your filming of this episode?
I can't remember really what happened last week. So I mean, as far as that episode, I've had a bit of a loss. I just remember that it was really a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun.
Had you any knowledge of Star Trek before coming on, or were you just flying blind?
Absolutely none. I do remember that particular suit was worn by James Cagney. That I do remember.
Wow.
Because when I went to Western costume, it had the thing. Jimmy.
How fabulous!
Western costume. Wow, that was around back then too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. God, yes. Oh, Western costume was back in the day. It goes back probably to the 30s or 40s.
Wow,
I would imagine. Yeah.
Oh, they're still there, aren't they? I think they're still. Well,
they're not where they used to be. They're in the valley now.
Oh, I never knew that they weren't in the valley. I've only known them in the valley.
They used to be on Santa Monica Boulevard or Melrose or one of those, giant like.
That's right.
Big, multiple floors. I remember early in my career going there and getting fitted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I really enjoyed there was a line that you delivered in this episode that made me laugh. I wrote it down. When Data is pissing you off and he's just rambling on too much, you hit him with enough. Let me kill him.
Yeah,
he's really beginning to irritate me. The way you said it, I thought that was the perfect delivery. I loved it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just loved your accent and your whole, this whole character you created. It was just delightful, and it was just such a different tone and flavor that the show took on. It was just refreshing on so many levels. And I just thought the guest stars just across the board were tremendous in this particular episode, the best I've seen so far for me.
It was a lot of fun to do. It was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
And I think that because it was new for the regulars, and there was such an enthusiasm.
Yes.
And it was contagious.
Well, they got out of those spacesuits. They got into something, something they could sink their teeth in, that kind of noir vibe that everyone likes anyway. Everybody likes to play that kind of, why I oughta, and the whole thing. So it was just, you could see. I mean, I I couldn't remember this episode at all, but, I have very little to do in it. But I was just going, oh, God, I wish I could have been in that part, in that holodeck. Why didn't they take me?
Yeah, with a cocktail dress on.
Oh, totally.
One of those long, skinny cigarettes.
Yeah.
It was fun. And then I remember the director called me up and said, I just want you to know that episode won the Peabody Award. I said, I didn't know.
It did.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
What?
It's another thing I was going to bring up. And something I didn't know, our good friend and associate producer Marie Segal sends this our way. Your birthday is February 29th?
It is. Yes, it is.
Wow.
That's a leap year, right?
Yeah. So do you celebrate? Do you celebrate on the 28th?
On the 28th.
Okay.
No, on the 28th. Yeah.
Well, that's how you got to be 176.
Yes.
So he was born
actually only
700 years ago.
Yeah, he's only 15 years old, actually. It's pretty great.
A lot of math there. It's the metric system. We don't.
We can't follow it. We can't follow it.
Another moment I really enjoyed watching you do, Harvey, was this when the scene comes in and you go out, you're like, I'm going to get Mr. Red Block. He's not going to like this. When you finally come back in with him, you're over the shoulder in the background, but the delight on your face that, I got the boss and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I could see it written all over your face. And I thought it was just, here you are in the background, but I could still pick up your energy from there. And I just watched how you were just rolling over with delight. I'm going to get you guys. I'm going to payback. You shouldn't have hit me.
Yeah. And
I really enjoyed that moment too.
To jump on that, Cirroc, Harvey, upon talking with you, we spoke on the phone a little bit, and upon talking with you today, you seem to have a lot of joy in your heart, like a joie de vivre, right? And that seemed to shine in your performance. And when Cirroc was just saying that, it made me think, is that something that you feel like you brought to every role? Or was this something that you just kind of do as an actor? Or was this one specifically that you said, finally, I can have a little bit of fun with this one?
No, I really don't know. I just know that personally, I live in a state of perpetual gratitude. Because to me, gratitude is the most important of all human emotions. And it's the primary ingredient of happiness. You know what I mean? I don't know a happy person who's not grateful. And I think every one of us has at least something for which to be grateful. And it just propels me through life with enthusiasm. So I don't know. I've felt that for many, many years. And then, 24 years ago when I finished this particular movie and decided that I'd had enough of the acting thing and I was going to go into the book business, I remember I'll tell you what, I remember I was in my trailer with the directors, with Steven Spielberg, and I said to Steven, you know what? When we wrap this film, I'm in the book business. He said, what? And he'd met my family. So I said, Louis, my son, was selling books at book fairs and so forth. And I said, I'm going to go into business with Louis. We're going to open up a shop. He said, what are you talking about? You're one of the stars of this movie. I said, no, but I've done it all my life, and it's a whole new chapter. And he said, I don't believe you. And then we opened the shop 24 and a half years ago. And it's called the #1 first edition shop in America. And I believe that's God's grace. I mean, that's God's grace. Because we sell exclusively first edition collectible literature, the greatest books ever written. And it's tremendously rewarding. It's rewarding. And
God, it looks beautiful.
We do a lot of gifts for the Oscars and all the award shows and stuff. But, so I've had a wonderful, a rewarding career in the business. And now another chapter was able to be opened for me, which is rewarding in a very different sense.
And so many big names come into your store and give you their words of encouragement, like Eric Idle here.
Yeah.
Where is the bookstore?
It's on Sunset Strip.
Oh my God! Okay, I cannot wait to come in.
Yes.
Oh, it's just. I mean, it's.
It looks gorgeous.
To work with my son and then to be surrounded by the greatest books ever written in the first edition. We've got the first separate printings of Shakespeare's plays here. I mean, we've got some incredible, it's investment literature, really,
Yeah, sure. Well, we are big book lovers in my family, so definitely, I cannot wait to come in.
Oh,
that's really cool. And the place is called Mystery Peer Books. You can find that at mysterypeerbooks.com, everybody. If you're local, even if you're not local, please do check it out. There's no way Seth MacFarlane's going to walk into some rinky-dink place. Obviously, this is the real deal, and it comes very highly regarded, apparently.
I love Seth's quote you have on. I love the bookstore. Now I have to learn to read. It was great, of course.
Well, wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and Harvey, we really appreciate you taking the time today
it's a great
to join us.
It's an honor and it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great privilege. Thank you.
I love the sentiment you shared with us as well. It's really important to put that out into the world, to put gratitude on the table, and remind ourselves always of to come forth from that point. And I think it will. I think it was really a beautiful thing for you to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Listen, it's been a privilege. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Harvey, thank you. We appreciate you. Everybody go check out mysterypeerbooks.com. Stick around, everybody. We will be right back with a little bit more on the seventh rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Denise Crosby. We are perpetually grateful, especially because of HARVEY JASON. After he left, we just were beaming about him. What a positive man, what a positive influence on everybody around him. I'm sure that's really cool. Very quickly, here are the trivioids of the day. They go a little something like this. The Gerada are a reclusive insect-like race known for its idiosyncratic attitude towards protocol. Captain Picard spells knife with an N, but maybe they forgot that everybody does. It has an N in it. Picard is dressed like a bellboy. Someone is trying to kill Jessica Bradley. Data does some speed reading. In 2026, a shortstop for the London Kings will break Jolton Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak. Beverly thinks Picard is a fish. Beverly Crusher swallows some gum. If Picard leaves town, the town leaves with him. And Felix Leach calls Picard a private dick. I wanted to make sure I didn't. What does that mean? Does that just mean like a private eye, or what is that?
Something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
So I definitely thought about the two of you when I was watching this episode, because full disclosure, I'm less into the old time shows and movies as I think most people are. I think it's just because I'm a snobby Frenchman or something. But as soon as this episode started, I was like, oh, this is right up Denise and Cirroc's alley. Am I wrong?
Oh, no. I love this kind of noir, cop, beautiful woman hiring the private eye to, get the guy off her back. And yeah, I thought they did. I loved the music they used behind it. And, I just think everybody got a real sense of playfulness getting into these characters and wearing these outfits and just removing it from what the sci-fi trope had been at this point, and they all had little really fun moments, really clever little bits they found, each one of them in it all. And so that was just really, really fun to watch.
Yeah. I enjoyed this as well. This is essentially the beginning of this blueprint for me of using these period pieces in Star Trek.
And
I
Holodeck.
think this is the first, in the Holodeck. I think it's the first time we see it in Star Trek in general. I don't think it's an original series kind of thing. I think this starts in the Next Generation, and I know that on Deep Space Nine we have a similar episode dealing with more heavy issues in Far Beyond the Stars. So they take that same thing and make it more heavy. But we also do it in Bada Boom, Bada Bang. We do it in other Little Green Men. There's other episodes which we go into the period piece on Deep Space Nine. But clearly, this is the first time it's being used. And it was fun to kind of see the origin of this thought. That's where I was going, Ryan, when I first saw it. I was like, okay, so this is where Ira, he got the license to go this direction based off of this kind of thing. And so I enjoy being able to watch how they do it. And it was fun. It's always fun to see guys dressed up in different costumes and kind of play with different accents. And I like Data being excited about, playing dress up. And the whole South American trope was funny for me. Data, South America. That was
right.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know people were gold and stuff.
Exactly. That was funny. Worf made me laugh when he said automobiles.
Right.
I thought there were moments that made me laugh. I actually liked the lipstick on Picard being noticed by Dr. Crusher, because it just shows me, okay, well, she's like, I'm going with you. What the, who's kissing you? Like, I need to figure out what's happening.
Right.
And so I like that. It's a fun moment. It also shows, that she is keeping her tabs on what's going on with her man. So I like a lot of the things in this episode. Definitely like the dress up, the period stuff. And the guest stars, you mentioned this earlier, Denise. I thought the guest stars really brought the flavor and made the period piece that much more authentic.
Absolutely. That they were key to me. They really brought it. I loved the lieutenant, that kind of befriends him, invites him over, gets him out of that interrogation room, wants him to come over, and just his attitude with the women. He's a blonde or brunette, he's just really. And at the end, when they say goodbye to each other, it was a very touching moment he had. It was a beautiful. He really filled that moment, that actor, with heart, and it was very touching. I thought it was a very touching moment.
Yeah, I didn't expect that. Well, I just thought that they're leaving, no big deal, whatever. And I can understand why the writers felt it necessary to add that, just to add a little more weight to the end of it, And so at first it kind of took me a little bit by surprise, but the performance was so nice, and it was sweetly delivered, and the mood and the directing, it actually ended up being like a really nice moment. And it was just, two people, two friends. One he says, will my wife and kids be there when I get home? And he says, I don't know. So
I loved that he
there was
didn't
something
know.
there. Yeah.
I loved that was his answer. I really don't know. I mean,
I think again, in our show on Deep Space Nine, we touched upon this similar idea with Vic Fontaine, which was our computer program, and him feeling like, that life was real for him in that holodeck program. And I felt the same kind of feeling watching him talk about his wife and kids. And I like that moment. Actually, it almost, the whole episode could have been about that idea, which is this world real does it continue when they're not there?
Right.
And is it real? At least to them, it's real. But how much? Where is the line? And how does it? Where does it fade? That could have been one of the premises just of the episode in itself.
Absolutely. They always, as we're seeing, they always do this double storyline. There's always the crisis of the planet they're going to, or some sort of impediment there, but then the internal, stuff that goes on, I think is always, it's like they're not trusting it enough to build the entire story around that. They still have to have the space adventure, the alien, bug
crutch.
Yeah. We got to throw that in there because this is a science fiction adventure show, and we've got to have that. But yes, I agree. Far more interesting with that reality, what's real and what isn't, and what happens when you leave.
Right now,
yeah.
I was just going to say real quick. Right now, there are a lot of Star Trek fans that are giggling because they know that there are subsequent episodes in the future of this show that actually deal with that. So pay close attention to Sherlock Holmes related episodes. But what were you saying, Cirroc?
The other thing was, I thought it was cool, and I was expecting to see when the computer program bad guy, Mr. Redblock, and his partner, Felix, when they walk out of the program onto the actual ship, and you see the bottom of them kind of disappearing. I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, so the program extends beyond the walls of the actual holodeck itself. And then I thought of it maybe like cell phone or Wi-Fi signal, like, the farther you get away from it,
it kind of fades out. Yeah,
it fades out. And so I was expecting to see them try to walk farther out and fade out even more, as opposed to just disappearing from the legs up. I was actually expecting them to venture out farther into the ship, and the farther they go, the more they disappear, like a cell phone signal.
Interesting. Yeah. I was a little ambivalent about that whole logic of that. I just thought, wait a minute. And even when
the disappearing legs, they bothered me a little bit.
Me too.
I was like, run back in, dude.
Yeah. Wait a minute. And it was a little like I'm trying to get, maybe I'm sure fans could explain this to me better, but when Picard goes into the holodeck for the first time and he's in his spacesuit, and they're seeing him in his spacesuit, I was like, well, wait a minute, that's not supposed to happen, is it? He's gone into the environment now, he should be dressed. Like, I don't know how that happens, but the whole thing should be as of one.
Yeah, it doesn't do it automatically. They have to dress for it now. But that's true. That could be part of the program where they just say, computer, give me 1940 whatever San Francisco and dress me in the proper attire or something like that. Right. And it's all in one shot. Yeah, that would be. But they do that. As we know, sometimes they're walking out still in the garb of the holodeck.
Which and speaking of which, when they at the end, when they return on the bridge, still in their 40s, no one comments on it. No one says anything, where I don't know that they would find it so fascinating. I mean, even Tasha would say something like, "What are you wearing? Wow, what is that? What is this thing around your neck? Or what's on your head?"
Yeah, I mean, Picard says, Tasha, it's a hat. Would you like to borrow it? Like, no, keep that to yourself, bro.
I mean, there was sort of like a moment there, like Worf's automobile line.
Yeah.
How versed are they in 40s costuming? I don't think Tasha would know a zoot suit from a double-breasted, linen jacket.
I wouldn't either. To be honest. I did want to point out really quickly, though, Cirroc, did you recognize the London Kings? when they said that the shortstop from the London Kings, because that was Buck Bokai played for the London Kings in a Deep Space Nine episode later on. And I had forgotten that this was mentioned here. So when they said London Kings, I was like, wow, there's a lot that they kept in the lineage. So, when Deep Space Nine wanted to have a baseball player, they probably were thinking, well, has baseball been referenced, this and that? And this, there was just that passing mention of the London Kings. And so they built upon that. I don't believe it's mentioned any other time throughout the Next Generation.
Wow. The other thing I noticed was the newspaper guy.
He was great.
The guy he was great. He was like, "Hey, can't you tell he's from South America?" But that guy has been in another Star Trek episode. I'm pretty sure he was in our show.
Really?
I'm pretty sure. And
Dick
I'm
Miller.
Pretty sure it was,
oh, yeah.
He was in the homeless episode when we had the homeless encampments and stuff like that. I think that's him.
And we had Ira on the show.
Yes.
Oh. Let me see. I believe you're right. Yeah, he was Vin in Past Tense Part 1 and 2. You're exactly right. Yeah, you nailed it.
Wow.
Yeah, because that guy is he's an actor that, once you see his face, you're like, oh, I know that guy.
Great. And they all had great faces, these guys.
And good, just great at their roles. I liked also the police officer, the bad police officer was good at being an intimidating kind of bullying force. The Wayland guy, Mr. Wayland, who asked a question at the end, I thought he did a good job of, showing that he was really on Picard's side, and he was like, "Sorry about this, my bad."
We all expected him to die, though. We're like, "Who's this guy? I don't know this guy. This guy's not going to make it."
Yeah. And then the guy who ended up kind of dying, or at least getting shot at, who was that guy? Because he was basically the red shirt of this episode.
That was Whelan. Yeah.
Okay.
That was Mr. Whelan or
like
Mr.
Whelan. Historian or something on the ship. I didn't,
Right.
Yeah,
so
I wish I'd paid better attention to that. But yeah, he was the red shirt for sure. Also, I want to quickly add that in Past Tense 1 and 2, I believe we had Ira for both episodes. We also had Mr. Robert Hewitt Wolf for the first one. So that was great having them. But that was a good catch.
Dick Miller, right?
Yeah, I remember them talking about what a big deal he was. Born in the Bronx.
Yeah. He's a great actor. Obviously, and that's one thing I also noticed from the conversation that Harvey was telling us is that in the Star Trek world, and this is true of Hollywood in general, but specifically in Star Trek, I noticed that a lot of people that work on the show have had ties, previous friendships, relationships. There's a lot of picking talent up along the way in this business. So Gene worked with Harvey on another project that he mentioned, did this Genesis 2. He liked him. He wanted to use him again. He had a role for him. This is a common theme in show business. We talked with Todd Stashwick about how Terry Matalas and him worked together on the 12 Monkeys, and then he brought him in for this. So it's a common theme that and this is just good information for people out there who want to be in the business or want to apply the same principles in their own profession, is that when you do good work and you're a good person and you do good things, that kind of can leave a positive impact with people that they carry on in the future. And you never know what kind of opportunities that leads to down the road. And that's why you do your best, and that's why you always deliver, your best when you can, because it pays dividends in the long run.
Absolutely. Well said and true. We've all experienced it. I've certainly experienced it in my career. So,
I always say it's not who you know, it's who likes you, because we all know that if somebody is not good or isn't great on set or does something bad later on or whatever, who they know actually will hurt their career, because they'll say, don't work with that person. But it's who likes you. Like Cirroc said, if you do good work and you're a good person, people are going to always put in a good word for you, and they're going to want to use you again.
Yeah, I always talk to my son about, always be invited back.
Yeah.
Leave somewhere better than you found it, and always be invited back. So it's true. It's the same sort of thing.
By the way, Denise, are you free next week to come back on our show? Because she's definitely leaving this show better than when she came. Every week making the show better. We really appreciate you. By the way, this is the end of the first half of your tenure as Tasha Yar already. Can you believe it? And something I noticed a few episodes ago that I guess this is as good of a time as any to point out, you were number 4 on the call sheet. You were billed as number 4. That is pretty, I mean, look, you've got the main character, Patrick Stewart, and the second main character, his first officer. Then you had the biggest name was number 3, who was LeVar Burton. And then you were basically, I mean, those are basically the ones that are all called for. Like nobody's breaking that top 3. And you were the top of everybody else, of the non already spoken for numbers. And I remember being really impressed when I saw that in like the 4th or 5th episode. I noticed it. That's pretty cool, That's a pretty big deal.
Absolutely amazing. And I wish they gave you more to do in this episode, because as the person has that kind of a billing, by the way, LeVar Burton has had very little to do, considering that he's number 3 in this show. I can't remember a major moment for him in these 13 episodes. Except for the time when he was given the sight and he took his glasses off and gave that monologue. But other than that, they haven't written well for his character. He's usually just passing by in the hallway saying, "Yeah, okay, sure." Or like in this episode,
what do you think, Wes?
Yeah, what do you think,
Wes? Wesley saves the day.
Yeah, I saw that too.
I wrote the same thing in my notes. I was like, wow, look who saved the day again.
Although I did like at least that Riker shot him down I'm like, at least we're getting there. He basically was like, he's actually said, Mr. LaForge has it covered. But then somebody said, I think it might have been you.
But LaForge is the chief engineer with digital robotic eye. I mean, seriously, he doesn't get to look through the microscope.
I can't explain. I'm looking at it going, this is absurd. Wesley knows more than LaForge.
He knows more than everybody.
The guy knows every single aspect of this working ship.
Yeah.
Like a more than Data.
Yeah. More than Data.
It's
too much.
I don't know.
Ridiculous. He literally walks into the bridge. He says, "Yeah, I just read the entire encyclopedia on transporters." Like
Data can do that in 1 second, theoretically. So just FYI, that's something.
I've studied all the manuals in the
I know exactly how that
the holodeck
of the entire ship
and all the engineers are like
the part
looking
we need
over his shoulder.
The dude is a I don't know he's a computer.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not a human child.
Doogie Howser. They cast it wrong.
Wesley Howser. Yeah,
it should have been Wesley Crusher as the Doogie Howser of space.
One other point about that bridge moment, though, was actually for the first time and possibly the only time, Miss Tasha Yar, Lieutenant Chief of Security, was left in charge of the bridge and the ship. And that, it was a quick moment
no dialogue,
that it was mentioned.
It would have been nice if Tasha says, give some order and instruction to somebody.
Yes, validate the position. See it through.
Or just have the whole B plot. The whole B plot is with her. Set
course to 305 mark, something like that.
Right. Or, accelerate or to warp, warp 5, just do some kind of command. Yeah.
But still, it was that momentous occasion that showed us that she was basically third in command there, right? When Captain and Commander are gone, Tasha Yar is there. I wish we could have seen more of that and in subsequent episodes as well. But it was certainly like a moment to note, because it was, an important moment, I thought.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah.
It's just some of the things they're still have to fix. I think
It'll be a
the
while.
Wesley saving the day is a little bit, as they just keep drawing from that same well. It's running dry for me. But the other things like the playfulness, the detective, the costuming, I thought Gates did a great job in this episode. I liked her in the waiting room scene when she sees the other girl. She starts buttoning up her blouse a little bit, like, well, wait a minute, I don't want to be mistaken for somebody. And I like the moment she played, with the guy who was kind of trying to come on to her with the tickets in the background, and
she swallowed the gum.
Yeah. She played the moments pretty well to me, and I enjoyed it. I thought it showed a different side of her that I don't get to see. Most of the time, I feel like she's always like holding back something. That's what I feel like when I'm watching her. She's holding back saying something to Picard, and I always feel the hold back. But this time, I actually felt like she was having fun and being more loose with her character.
She takes that little trip coming into the precinct on the stairs, wearing heels.
That was exactly the big moment for me. Was she got to show off some physical comedy and that dancer's dexterity, because I played it back a few times. That was very good balance and dexterity. Like, she had one foot in the air. The one that was planted did a fake ankle twist, and she still landed on this one going down a step. I'm like, there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot that could go wrong with that move. Yeah. And she really showed off some skills there, I thought.
Absolutely.
Which actually brings me to the home run of the day. It is for that reason that I believe, in my opinion, Gates McFadden gets the home run of the day. She got to show off some physical comedy, which we all know back in the day was the reason she auditioned for the role, was because the assistant told her that the role of Beverly Crusher was the comedic one. So she auditioned and got that one. And then afterwards, she's like, this role isn't funny. So maybe a lost opportunity there to give her more comedic roles, because clearly she knows how to do it, whether it's just a look or physical comedy. There was a lot more to her than just the seriousness of the mom role or the doctor or whatever else. But she gets the home run of the day for me, as well as the shortstop for the London Kings. I'm sure there was a home run in that winning streak somewhere, in that hitting streak.
I like it.
What do you guys think? Who gets the home run today?
Oh, let's see. Well, I'm really loving the guest star roster. This to me is just a real, just half dozen of just superb actors, faces, just everyone nailing, bringing it to the set, bringing something magical, not intimidated by walking on to a already in progress TV show, how that can always be. But really, I think they elevated the episode for me in its entirety.
Yeah, I'm going to have to second that. And, I'm going to actually say the home run for me was Harvey Jason and his great playback of his experiences as an actor. I enjoyed his stories. I enjoyed his performance in this. It actually reminded me a lot of Life is Beautiful. The guy in that movie, Roberto.
Yeah. Oh God.
I think it's Benini.
Yeah.
Roberto Benini, if I'm not mistaken.
Benini.
Oh, yes. The Italian guy.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes. There was something about Harvey's performance that reminds me of Roberto Benini.
Nice.
That very good. Very good.
And and I enjoyed the words of wisdom he left behind too as well. And I thought also, how funny is it when he says, "Yeah, I was just talking to a director." No, it was Steven Spielberg.
I know.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, just that director.
Some kid.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
That's funny.
What film? I wonder what film that was.
Yeah, I do too. And actually, going to have to do my homework on this
Yeah.
Genesis 2 pilot. I want to find out more information about Gene Roddenberry's, some of his failed projects, because we always see people's successes and we don't see the kinds of failures it takes before you get to that level of success. Another kind of lesson I learned when I hear those stories, it makes me say, oh, wow. So, it's okay to fail. It's okay to not make it. It's all right to be turned down. Because, if you stay persistent and you have a vision, you have your goal, then you could turn out to be like Gene Roddenberry and go from a failed pilot like Genesis 2 to a hit show like Star Trek. So that's another kind of optimism that I saw out of just these conversations.
You can get to a very successful pilot like Geordie LaForge. So let's give a very special thanks before the free-for-all to Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, who I'm mad at about the Grizzlies-Warriors game, Bill Victor Arukin, Titus Muller, Darlena Marie, Dr. Mohammed Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, the aforementioned, Anna Post, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neil Akasaka, Justine Norton Kurtzen, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, Mai, live from Tokyo, Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Heed, Jed Thompson, Luther Haynes Jr., Dr. Courtney Lewis, Beth Ernest, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason Okun. All right, let's hit that there free-for-all. Everybody stick around. We will be right back on the 7th rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Denise Crosby. This is the free-for-all. Look at all of these beautiful faces joining us. We've got Malissa Longo, Eve England out in Wales, Jason Okun with the radical poster behind him, Dr. Mohammed Noor with nothing behind him. We have Homer Frizzell somewhere in that scene from the episode. We've got Allison hanging out here. Cool artwork behind her. Dr. Susan V. Gruner is here with 2 cool shirts. Carrie Schwent is here showing off some cool background from the cruise, looks like. Mai is, let me guess, live in Tokyo, of course. Matt Boardman has his awesome family Sisko shirt. Marie Segal is floating out in space, probably with, Ferengi Eyes shirt. God. Dr. Courtney Lewis is here as well. And she's in Oklahoma City, by the way. The Dark Lord, Chris McGee, is here as well. All right, it's time. Malissa Longo. Oh, first things first. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
7.4 is where I'm going.
Anybody else have any guesses?
I'd go lower. I'd say 6.8.
What? This is my Peabody Award.
I enjoyed this. Yeah. I'd go 8.
I'd go
8.2.
I'm going to guess even.
What was your guess, Denise?
I'd say 8.
Wow.
No, 8. I'm going to say 8.4.
So won a Peabody Award, right? But I know that the people in Massachusetts have a town, and it looks like it's Peabody, but they call it Peabody. So is it a Peabody?
Actually, I don't know. You could be right. I don't know.
I always thought it was Peabody. Anyway, the answer is you guys should just copy off Cirroc Lofton's homework because it's a 7.3.
Oh,
right there.
I think it's better than that.
Heck yeah.
I do.
Well, Malissa Longo, awesome stem bolt and chill shirt. We love it. Looks amazing on you. 2 of our favorite guys. What did you think of this episode?
First, I have to say, collect some.
Well done.
Fluent.
Very well. Well pronunciated.
I really enjoyed this episode so much. It was fun. It was fun to see them play in the holosuite and find so much amusement in this world that they're not familiar with. And I love the use of language and how the past is learning from the future and vice versa. And I have to say that Gates, for me, knocked it out of the park in this episode. Her falling, tripping down, yes, home run for Gates. Her tripping down the stairs because she's not used to walking in heels was a brilliant moment for me. And then her, sneakily hiking up her skirt, and she just had so many nice little nuggets of brilliance in this episode, and her chemistry with Picard is great. So yeah,
it's a great moment behind you, actually.
Yeah. Yes. And yeah. So good all the way around. I really enjoyed this episode, and I think it deserves higher than a 7.3 personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was the first of many holodeck episodes in the world of Star Trek. Eve England is, guess what, out in Wales. What did you think of this episode?
Yeah, I mean, Melissa just stole what I was going to say. It was so much fun. To me, Beverly really was the standout. I just almost burst out laughing when she swallowed her chewing gum.
Yes,
really hilarious. Because I guess you wouldn't have any idea what it was. But yeah, I loved all the film noir elements of it, the music, the costuming, the hair, and like how Beverly was, the femme fatale sort of look and vibes about her. So I really did love the aesthetics of the episode as a whole. I mean, it still just makes me think, why on earth that someone designed holodecks to have the ability to turn off a safety, or to why that's even an option. It just seems such a risk. I don't know how that ever passed sort of health and safety requirements in the future. But just a couple of points that were in the companion. They mentioned that, when they were talking about DiMaggio had sort of a hitting record, which went until 2026. And apparently it was Buck Buckeye from Deep Space Nine. That was the person who stopped that run. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that was a nice little Deep Space Nine. And the other sort of Deep Space Nine aspect that I liked about it was how they did have that self-awareness of the characters at the end, and how you kind of think, that sort of just made me think of Vic Fontaine and the clever things they do with that in Deep Space Nine later on. And just really finally, they just said they had considered, and they debated whether they should film it all in black and white to be more like a film noir movie. But they said that, they kind of rationalized it that in universe, it wouldn't change the color of the Starfleet guys in there. But it's interesting that obviously they do clearly change their mind in Voyager with Captain Proton. So I don't know if they ever say that that's sort of some upgrade with the holodecks later on, but I thought that was just quite interesting that they'd even, because I think that would have been really interesting if they'd filmed it all in black and white. I would have liked to have seen that.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, because they're experiencing it in color, as they're in it. So they're not watching it as a film, as we would be watching it as a film. So it kind of makes sense that,
makes sense.
they would be in color. It would still be in color. Plus, you wouldn't get that great red lipstick.
No, and all the inks that you had, the costumes. Yeah, no, I'm glad they did that way. But it's interesting that they have taken a different approach on the different shows. So it's really cool. No, I really enjoyed it. It was fun. Yeah,
it's a good point about the lipstick. Also, the person that started the petition to make those scenes in black and white, the ornery Jason Okun, is also here. He demands those scenes be restored in black and white. How are you, Jason? What do you think of that episode?
Hello, everybody. This is certainly an episode that's different from everything that came before. I think, if anything else, it made The Next Generation stand out, or at least be quite a bit different from what came before it in the original series. It was certainly a great attempt to try to do something different. And I think we certainly touched upon a lot of things that were the firsts here. Obviously, it's the first real holodeck episode. And, the holodeck malfunctions, which became a cliche later on. A lot of these things sort of got used and reused. Obviously, there are a lot of first mentions. I mean, Eve said it's the first mention of baseball, and it kind of continues on throughout. There are a lot of firsts here, and it's a nice diversion to be looking at this. A lot of very nice touches. Probably the most amount of extras I think we've seen so far in the sets and everything. I think they were probably cheaper to do because there were sets, kind of regular type sets rather than alien sets. They were just easier to put together, but there were a lot of them. Probably the most amount that they've used so far in the series. Lots of nice touches. I mean, there's one shot where they enter the holodeck when they're all dressed, and you can see the exit, and there's a reflection in the puddle, which is not that easy. Was not that easy to do, I guess, at the time. But they could actually, pull a lot of that off, which was really interesting. It just had a very nice look about it, and that's why it's very memorable, because it's so different from everything else. There's a lot of stuff that was tried and came off very well. Denise, I don't think you had an awful lot to do there. I think some of it was just basically looping.
Yeah, I mean, although we did get a moment of me in the captain's chair.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of says something. But then, so little is ever followed through, as we were talking about. It would have been nice to have me, give a command or something, to kind of just make it a whole piece, but they, this is where it begins to unravel a little for me. You'll start to see where it's just, can I do this much longer? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
great stuff, Jason. Thank you. Dr. Muhammad Noor is also here, and he thinks that every week on here. He's like, can I do this much longer? How are you?
That's absolutely not what I think. I enjoyed the episode, actually. I didn't really remember it. I should have rewatched more recently than this, but I just watched it earlier today just for this discussion. But yeah, no, it was fun. One aspect which I liked especially, and this is something that is rare in a lot of Star Trek, which is the incorporation of a completely non-humanoid alien. We unfortunately didn't actually get to see them, but still, at least they're described there. They're insectoid and things like that. And I remember there was a lot of discussion, or not, I don't say a lot of discussion, there's some passing comments about how it's this is an insect mind and things like that. It's just assuming that somehow insects are going to be much more rigid about these sorts of things, maybe because they have fewer neurons or something. The timing of which is really interesting, because I don't know if any of you guys saw, but just yesterday, some scientists published the first full wiring diagram of an insect brain. This is a 6-hour-old baby Drosophila melanogaster fruit fly. It has 3,016 neurons, and they mapped every single one of the 500,000 synapse connections on there. And this to be, for context, this is smaller than a poppy seed. They mapped 500,000 connections inside this thing that's smaller than a poppy seed. So that's a big recent scientific result that connects to this episode.
Amazing.
It's brilliant.
Because insects are the coolest things ever.
Mm-hmm. And Muhammad is an expert on fruit flies, we all know, which is a true thing.
Yeah.
Fruit flies.
And did the paper conclude that they are really sticklers about pronunciation?
Oh yeah, that was in one of the footnotes.
Okay.
And they are easily offended.
That was a different footnote. Yeah.
Absolutely
that
no
would be the
segue.
Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, no segue in any of the stickler or any of that. Homer Frizzell is up next. Hi, Homer. How are you?
I sometimes come off as a little prickly, and I am easily offended. So I think this was a lot of fun. I actually thought they had a lot of things that they could have used, and it could have been a 2-parter or even a 4-parter these days. And I was like, wait, couldn't they do more with this woman that was at the precinct? I mean, maybe there was a reveal at the end that Dr. Crusher was modeling on someone who was actually arrested for something, and then she's like, whoopsie. But I loved it. I love film noir, and especially like Patrick Stewart's sort of enjoying this as he's supposed to, kind of like, oh, they got this. This is really real. That's very good, quite convincing. And so in this moment here, I think the expert of the time period is getting ready to speak a little bit. He's like, okay, good. I'm going to learn some stuff. This is fun. So I think that from my perspective, the crew, even though this guy ended up getting shot, had a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and the other thing I'll say, I also think that they had fun putting together the set for Dixon's office as well, things appropriate to 1941. So that was cool to see.
Great stuff. You look freaking amazing, by the way, Homer. All kidding aside.
Thanks, kid.
Looking great. Thanks, kid. Well, Allison, how are you today? You got a lot of cool things in your background. Hope you're doing well. What did you think of this episode?
Well, it's always fun to have a Holodeck Goes Wrong episode. So enjoyed that and got to see them enjoy it too. Could really tell the actors were having a great time on set. So that's always fun to see. And yes, Dr. Crusher was my favorite. She did wonderful, especially when Picard said, oh, can we bring the historian too? And just how her face fell.
I know.
That was amazing. I missed Tasha, though, in this episode a lot, especially in that briefing scene. It didn't make any sense to me that she wouldn't be there as the security chief while they're talking about the hostile aliens that they're going to go meet.
I thought
so
the
that
same
made no
thing.
sense.
I thought the same thing. I can't figure. It's so revealing, to go back and look at all this stuff, from this point of view, because I'm just going, well, what was their thinking on this one?
Yeah.
I thought, well, maybe somebody got to be on the bridge.
Wesley was there.
Wesley was there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. And Worf would be there instead of me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Isn't
yeah.
He's not been promoted yet at this point, right?
No. It's all wrong.
Damn it.
So yeah, that was my, I guess, nitpick. It was like, no, she should be there.
No, I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I like the little walk and talk between Geordi and Data, putting the seeds out for we're going to get Sherlock Holmes from them later. So a little bit of nice foreshadowing. So I like
breadcrumbs. Yeah.
Stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
That's the second time that Sherlock Holmes was mentioned on this particular recording. So there's a lot of teasing going on for that stuff.
Indubitably.
Very nice. Thanks, Allison. Dr. Susan V. Gruner is here. Always happy, always smiling, and she's about to drop some knowledge bombs on us. What's up? How are you?
I'm great. I love this episode. I love the cars, and you knew I had to say that. And, the clothes.
Automobiles.
Awesome. I even like the fake snow. Yes. I laughed about the fake snow. I thought it was hilarious. What is that stuff? What do they use for snow?
Yeah.
What do they use? It's
some kind of synthetic, like plasticky thing. It looks like.
Yeah, it's like
shredded.
It's not wax. That's what they used when in Encounter at Farpoint, when they froze me when Q froze me. That was wax.
That was all wax.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh wow.
Warm wax. There's no way you could do that now. There's no way. Yeah, there was stuff that was so, risky and dangerous at times, but it's kind of a plasticky, light, flaky thing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't melt.
Probably takes 20 years off your life if you inhale it.
Just like the dirt. You're right, Sue. It's because they don't want it to melt right away. It's got to just sit there for several takes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and awesome. I agree with what everybody else has said so far. It was a lot of fun, and I just watched it today, so it's fresh on my mind. And Bev definitely. Gates knocked her role out of the park, and I agree also that they should have had more Tasha Yar. I don't understand why they didn't use you more. I just don't get it.
I know. We don't. That's the mystery question.
Well, let me add to ask a question then in relation to that comment. Was there a security chief on Star Trek original series?
I
don't think so, right?
Wasn't it Sulu kind of? He kind of took that role on, but somebody would know better than I.
They had some guest actors.
See, that's why I think they're doing a poor job of developing the security chief, because they don't know how to write for that character at this point.
Right.
I think that's really what they don't know, because by the time they get around to Odo, they're doing a very good job with Odo's character as far as security is concerned. But at this point, they don't know what to do. It seems like
it's absolutely right. And again, this early first season is predicated on the original template of Star Trek. So until that starts to shift and Michael Piller comes in and, brings a different vision, I mean, I had this direct conversation with Gene himself. He wanted it to stay like the original show. And so it was, you're right. There's, not everybody is written for very, very well. We were talking about Geordie's character at this point is not really that. The writing is not great for him either. So there's some. This is what it was. This is we're seeing it in all together, and you're. This is what I was going through.
All right, great stuff. And Matt Boardman found us some stuff on Google on the snow. I don't know if that's what they still used or what they used 35 years ago or not, but basically a polyacrylate polymer, which means who knows? I don't know what that means, but I bet Carrie Schwent has an idea. What do you think of this episode?
Oh, this episode is way too much fun. I love just the aesthetic of the 40s, the cars, the clothes, pretty much all of that. On our first Star Trek cruise, the picture behind me for Q's costume party, before I came up with the Waldo and Carmen Sandiego that we've done since, I decided, 1940s is easy to outfit to gather up. We can be, background characters from Picard's Dixon Hill series. So that's what we came up with that. So, and Eric's outfit was so easy to put together, as most guys' outfits from the 40s were. But since TJ the Party Gorn isn't here, I have Howell Gorn from the cruise that we were given for my tiny little nitpick. And he wants to know why Picard still had lipstick on his upper lip after leaving the holodeck, and had it for long enough that Beverly was able to do a mom thing and wipe it off of his face.
Because that was holographic lipstick. Good point.
That's awesome. Clearly, they still hadn't figured out the holodeck quite yet, and also Data is definitely the king of the rabbit hole. When he goes down another rabbit hole, reading everything he can on Dixon Hill to just completely immerse himself in that world, as many of us sometimes tend to do when we get into a show or something that we like. He didn't quite go as far as Sherlock Holmes, but he came pretty close. And if Brent Spiner has never narrated for like crime novels on Audible or something, he was a natural with that bit at the end. And now for my limerick of the episode, I went at it from a point of view of what would a jingle on the radio for Dixon Hill sound like. And as soon as I thought of it that way, I had this thing written in 5 minutes. So here we go. A private detective does all that he can. He'll do all the tasks his clients demand. He'll stake out your house, take pics of your spouse, and locate the items no longer in hand. Yeah, that one was a lot of fun to write. And I will finish with a quote that Cyrus said on the holodeck that is just so, it's one of those that makes you think, and makes you wish that people talked more like this. But he said, make your thoughts fruitful and your words eloquent. I loved that. And that guy's voice is just fantastic too. One of those voices stuff you could listen to for hours.
Yeah. Thanks, Carrie. And speaking of eloquent, Mai is live in Tokyo. What's up, Mai? How are you? What do you think of this episode?
I'm good. I loved it. As everybody said, the whimsy of it was just fantastic. I really enjoyed that aspect of it a lot. Having just watched the most recent Picard episode and then seeing all of the plot between Beverly and Jean-Luc in this episode, it was like, wow, okay, I can see where Jack was made. That was felt like everybody else. Where's the Tasha love? I mean, why wouldn't she be at the table? They're going to go see a delegation. That was silly. So, but I was thinking about you there, Denise.
I know. I love that.
The thing about this episode, it was written by Tracy Torme, and it was, but the thing that I picked up on it when Data was scanning through all of the books on the screen. Ryan, can you put that picture up on the screen real quick? Look,
his name is on one of them, right?
Look at that.
Yeah. Yep. I thought I saw that.
That is the son of Mel Torme.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
really?
That was kind of cool. I picked up. I froze it for a second. That's kind of cool. They put the name on there. Nice.
Yeah. That was so cool.
So I dug that. The one minor nitpick: Data and Geordi walking down the hall, and he's like modus operandi. I'm like, no, AE is the diphthong for I. It's modus operandi. But anyway, they're not all that hot on their Latin stuff, but that's okay. Then the last thing I was walking, and Felix Leach walks, and I'm really glad you guys did that interview. I can't wait to watch that. But the Felix Leach walks in. I'm like, where the heck have I seen this guy before? And I thought about it. So it's the second or third time I've thought about this. And I flipped around and I looked at the eyes. And I was like, oh, Lapchick the Mad Hungarian on Gumball Rally. That's where that's from. He's the guy on the motorcycle in Gumball Rally.
Anyone?
And I was like, that's where I've seen that guy from. So that was kind of cool to check that out. And last thing I want to say is, Mohammed, great to hear your voice is back. And Homer, you rocked the background this time. 10 out of 10 on that.
And the foreground.
Yeah, foreground. Foreground's pretty good. It's a little bit prickly, but the background is awesome.
All right. Good stuff, Mike. What was that? Gumball what?
Gumball Rally.
Gumball Rally. Number one fan, Chris McGee, is here. What's up, Chris McGee? How are you? What do you think of this episode?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much, Ryan. And I very much enjoyed this episode, as others have mentioned. And I think the cast enjoyed the episode as well. I mean, any chance you can take to stretch your acting skills by playing a different character, or especially getting out of those spacesuits, was probably a very welcome one, which is why I'm sorry, Denise, that you didn't have a chance to experience that with them.
Yeah, they give me the Naked Now costume, you know.
Exactly.
Really got out of uniform then.
Yeah. I got out of my spacesuit and barely got into another one.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, as you said, yeah, it's the first major holodeck episode, the first of many. Also, the first holodeck malfunctions while people are trapped inside of many, kind of kicking off that trope. Carrie, to your point about the lipstick there, Troy at the very beginning mentions that the holodeck has been upgraded, yet that doesn't actually happen until a few episodes from now. I'm wondering whether or not maybe the episodes were written and or shot, in reverse order or something like that to account for that. But regardless, I think it's okay the way it stands, because it explains things like the lipstick and maybe the fact that everyone recognizes that Data isn't human and so forth, because they haven't really upgraded it in the Binar episode yet, to take care of little things like that. The second mention of Sherlock Holmes was fantastic. Love seeing Dick Miller in this episode. I had forgotten that he was in here. So great. And I've got a few other, little things I can mention, but I'll save them for the things left unsaid. So that'll give you a good reason to please support us on Patreon. And finally, besides Sherlock Holmes, I don't think there were any Nams in this episode. So I don't think you would count him anyway. But finally, the phrase of the episode, step on it.
Yeah, that was nice at the end there. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you, Chris McGee, the Dark Lord. The Lord of Light, however, Dr. Courtney Lewis, is also here. How are you, Courtney? What do you think of this episode?
I'm doing really well, and even better since I watched this episode. It was really good to revisit this kind of first Holodeck episode after going through so many other Holodeck episodes and kind of recapture that magic. I do have to say that this is at the point in the season where I really became increasingly concerned about the structural stability of the Enterprise between the malfunctions, the comms, the holodeck, and these kind of vulnerabilities to being scanned aggressively, transporter issues, the general lack of security where it should be. I was watching them come out of the second, possibly third exit at the very end, and wondering, well, wouldn't Tasha be there? Wouldn't we have all of our exits literally covered with that?
Right.
Otherwise, it was a fun episode, and the Emmy that it got for costumes was well earned just in the dress alone. And I thought it was also interesting that at the very end, when they give this kind of hint towards this sentient AI, right, that's going to be coming back later. And so they have this little scene where the AI is just a little bit self-realized, but you also get that when Picard leaves and comes back and the world has been going on without him, right? So we don't know at that. And I really like the idea of them kind of planting that seed for future holodeck episodes.
Yeah. Great stuff. Good point. We've all had that feeling of wondering if the world goes on outside of we're like, how is that? Maybe that's just me. Dr. Marie Segal is here. How are you, Anne Marie? What do you think of this episode? Did you love it?
Oh, I love this episode, and I love that other people love it, and that it's still coming up in Picard. Like, obviously, in last season of Picard, Renee Picard was reading that book, that like The Pallid Sun, and on the book spine it was by Tracy Torme, and it had like a picture of like a guy that kind of looked like Data. But also in the premiere of Picard, you see like when they do the Beverly reveal, her pearls from this episode are like strewn on her lab desk. I love that she still has them. Yeah, it's in like the very first few seconds of this season of Picard. And obviously, like, you see his Dixon Hill hat like in the background of his chateau. It's cute, and I always love reading about things that get auctioned off from this episode. I know like that trench coat went for a high price at Christie's a few years ago. And that's what Patrick Stewart says is the one thing he wished he kept from Star Trek, which that just goes to show how much even the actors love doing it. But yeah, I mean, I love Harvey Jason, love Peter Lorre in movies, so I love that he kind of like brought that back. And it's fun seeing Dick Miller here, since obviously that's like I think Ira's daughter's godfather, and he's in one of my favorite Deep Space Nine two-parters, Past Tense.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I just like, everything about this episode is great. The action figures are like the best Star Trek action figures ever. And which is just great that Playmates did action figures in these outfits. And what else? Yeah, I guess the only other thing is how great Beverly and Picard are and how hilarious that those third wheel moments are. It just like feels so real. And I feel like those are some of the first glimpses of when they start doing really great character moments. So just fantastic episode.
Great stuff. Thank you, Doctor. Somebody that knows nothing about being a third wheel, but everything about action figures. Matt Boardman is also here. What's up, Matt? What do you think of this episode?
I am an action figure. I wish, man, that'd be cool. What a fun episode. It's funny to come back to. I mean, we saw the holodeck in the pilot in Encounter at Farpoint, but to be able to come back and now that we're so many years past this and we've done so many holodeck adventures, but to come kind of back to like, to me, this is like the real, like this is like their first complex like holodeck simulation, and I love how they're also just fascinated by this this world, the recreation of it, the cars, the sounds, the smells, and again, that's like the first season. Every time I go back, it like, I don't know, it takes me back to when I was a kid and I used to watch Next Generation, and that sense of wonderment, where everything was new and a lot of stuff hadn't been, the universe hadn't been quite as mapped out as we have it at this point now. But I love the music is fun. I love a good detective story. I love that they, that this was, essentially this was a period piece. And so I love that. I love the costumes. I mean, come on, Patrick Stewart, that dude can wear a suit.
Yeah.
He looked really sharp in that thing. I like that introduction that we get to kind of the the consciousness of the holodeck, and the ramifications of when a hologram steps outside of it. One real quick interesting thing, in the DVDs, and now they've restored it when they did the HD upgrade to it. But for a short period of time, there's a song by Johnny Green at the end. It's a variation of Out of Nowhere, which I think is very appropriate titled song for a holodeck adventure. And it's, I don't know, there's just something about it that it's just so smooth. And for a short period of time when they had the episodes on Netflix, they actually replaced that music for some reason. And I've never been able to figure out why. And when it was brought back, when they updated it, we did the upgrade to HD, they brought that music back. So anyway, that's my little fun thing. But yeah, I love this episode. So much fun.
Great stuff. Thanks, Matt. Well, Denise, Cirroc, any final thoughts on this episode here? That Denise said should have been an 8 or higher.
Well, again, it really shows you how important each part needs to be cast, because again, these guest stars that played the detectives, the cop, the newspaper man, you guys have singled out some of these actors. In general, I get a sense they have actually elevated this episode. They have helped to elevate it. They're fabulous character actors. They bring so much to the game. Great faces, really believable as these in this period. And it was just for me a delight to see the attention to that casting that they bring. I know that the guys acting with them too really appreciate that, because it just makes you a better actor, when you're acting with really good actors like that. I love that, Data is from South America. That just is nuts. And nobody bats an eye, it's just, wow, it's so good. It's so good. I'd forgotten that completely. So that was a delight. But this episode is just, regardless of my involvement in it, it just was a really, really fun watch and delight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to run off a few points. One, when Picard is yelling at the computer when they're stuck in there, I laugh because I think it's hilarious to watch him yelling at the computer. Open the door. as if yelling at it is going to make it,
it's like when we yell into our phone, representative.
Yeah.
Representative.
Right.
I add a few adjectives to that.
So that was, I thought that was funny. I just enjoyed watching him yelling at the computer. The other thing I thought was really clever was when Data says he's on ice. He's being grilled, and she's like, "What is he, a fish?" I love the whole language play there. I thought that was great. Question: does Tracy Torme get any residual income for ideas that were borrowed from based on this original idea? So every time Hollow Suite breaks down, do they get this? Tracy get any kind of residual, or anytime they mentioned this London baseball team? Does Tracy get any residual, or anytime they do a period piece set in a certain time? So I wonder if that's something that they get actually acknowledged for, paid for subsequently. Mm-hmm. The last thing I want to say is that this episode was given a Peabody Award, and according to Peabody's explanation of their award system, or what they're giving awards for, it's Peabody Awards honors excellence in storytelling that reflects the social issues and the emerging voices of our day. And relative to those standards, I would have liked to see a social issue being addressed in this episode. 1941 was ripe with enough issues that we could have been dealing with. We're right.
They didn't address any.
No, this is World War II times. This is the time of women's suffrage. They could have been addressing that issue. So there's enough issues going on at the time where they could have made it about something more than just this kind of random murder mystery plot. It could have actually had some kind of gravitas to why they were there, or what the tone of that era is different to the future, and how they kind of try to correct those things by saying, no, we don't talk to women like that. We don't call them broads, babes, and dames and stuff. Certain things like that could have been an opportunity for them to stand up for certain issues at that time. They didn't do it. In hindsight, is obviously 2020, but Far Beyond the Stars did it when they had the same opportunity. So to its credit, I feel like Far Beyond the Stars and Deep Space Nine would have been more of a candidate for a Peabody Award when you talk about reflecting social issues of the day. So,
100%.
So interesting. Based on what you've just said, the definition, how did this win a Peabody at all?
Right. Right.
I mean, it doesn't.
They're not sticking up. They're not sticking up for any group. No marginalized group. Nobody who's oppressed, or there's nobody who's actually being stood up for in this episode. It's just a fun, friendly, malfunction computer story. But it could have been used to say, hey, this is this is the time period. These are the things that are flawed about this time period, and we're going to kind of correct the record as best we can. They didn't do that.
No,
and
so interesting.
It would have been a great opportunity, like Far Beyond the Stars took that same opportunity to do something with it and tell a different story.
Yeah.
One last thing I would just include too, because it just is, it can't go unnoticed. We talked about it once again. Wesley saves the day, and it just I just don't get how, what are LaForge's qualifications at this point? If Wesley's going in and fix it, having studied all of the manuals of the holodeck and, and fix it. And it just, we are seeing that in every single episode.
Yeah. He needs his own ship. just make him a captain already.
He got the battle bridge in the first episode.
His own ship.
Yeah.
He needs, and only he needs to be on the ship. Only he.
Wes. Okay.
You don't need any. How much they'd save,
Well, we do have to run. Everybody in the comments below, though, let us know what you would call the USS Wesley Crusher. Also, continue the conversation that Cirroc brought up about the Peabody Award, because that's a really interesting thing, and we'll probably talk about it more in our final segment called Things Left Unsaid for Patreon members. But until then, you're just going to have to guess what it is and talk about it in the comments below. Thank you to Melissa, Eve, Jason, Mohammed, Homer, Allison, Carrie, Mai, Chris, Sue, Matt, Anne-Marie, and Courtney. We will see you next time. And until then, always remember the 7th rule.